Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Consolidate Tech Stacks to Reduce Costs and Enhance Security. Before I turn it over to our presenters, I want to run through the agenda, a couple housekeeping items, and do a little introduction. Without further ado, let me get into the agenda. So we're going to start off talking about the tech stack challenges. We'll get into some of the resulting risks, talk about evolution of managed services and improved security outcomes, get into some enhanced visibility and compliance, and then get into a discussion. I have a few questions to ask of our presenters directly, and then we'll get into your guys' questions. So get those in throughout the webcast. We'll take those as they come in. So let me first introduce you to Craig Robinson. He is the Program Director of Security for IDC. Within IDC Security Services, research practice focusing on managed services, consulting, and integration. His coverage areas include IoT security, blockchain services, threat detection and response services. Mr. Robinson delivers unparalleled insight and analysis, leveraging a unique experience leading diverse IT teams across several industries. This expertise has allowed him to provide valuable thought leadership, research, and guidance to vendors, service providers, and also clients worldwide. Before joining IDC, Craig was an IT leader in various firms in the ERP consulting, manufacturing, distribution, retail, hospitality, and medical insurance fields. He's also led IT teams in various regulatory environments such as PCI DSS, HIPAA, and state regulatory bodies such as the New York State Department of Financial Services. And moving on to our next presenter, let me introduce to you Mark Cornwell, who is the Chief Information Officer with Neturion. Mark joined the company in 2016 and had brought with him over 20 years of progressive cross-industry IT leadership. He oversees currently Neturion's engineers who build, manage, and monitor the company's internal systems and technology. Recently, he served as the CTO of Swiss Watch International. This is after management roles with AOL, Chico's FAS, Winn-Dixie, and Luxottica Retail. Throughout his corporate IT career, he has led significant business and technology transformation projects. He has also directed large-scale POS implementations, business intelligence installations, and infrastructure migration programs. He had a 20-plus year in the military, spanning 5 years in the Air Force as a Chinese linguist, cryptographer, and included over 16 additional years in the Coast Guard Reserve as a commissioned officer. With a Bachelor of Science from Excelsior College in 1998, he also completed Reserve Officer Candidate Indoctrination at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. All right, so those are our presenters. So let me just give you a brief background on Neturion. Here's a few numbers that you can see. We have over 325 employees. That includes 2 NOCs and 2 security operations centers, one in Bangalore, one in Houston. And we also have 20,000 business locations protected, 1 million endpoints, 6 billion events logged per day. So we look through all those logs so that you don't have to. And so just a little bit more about who we are. Unlike hundreds, even thousands of security solutions in the marketplace, Neturion is purpose-built for mid-market's operational challenges when it comes to cybersecurity. Neturion's approach of combining our proprietary purpose-built technology and 24/7 SOC and NOC give customers the ultimate flexibility to adapt and grow, all while maintaining a secure network environment. Our co-management allows us to tailor our involvement and yours to be most effective. We also have multi-tenant that allows our enterprise clients to control visibility amongst divisions or affiliates and allows IT service providers to easily serve multiple clients. Rapid deployment, we feel, is very crucial. Many cybersecurity initiatives fail to get out of the starting blocks or stumble along and end up as shelfware that never met its potential. And we provide flexible pricing that ensures you can start with what you need, scale as you go, and have a constant predictable cost. So that's the information I wanted to share with you today about our company. So now I'm going to turn it over to Craig from IDC, and he'll get into the survey that we talked about and the reporting coming out of it. So turning it over to you, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me today. So I'm Craig Robinson. I'm with IDC, and for those of you who are not familiar with IDC, IDC stands for International Data Corporation. So we are just a team of market research analysts that provide guidance to firms such as Neturion and others that are dealing with technology in ways that it impacts all of us today in our everyday lives. I'm going to go to the next slide. So when we, no, you can go, let's back up one. I apologize. There we go. Perfect. So the methodology for our survey and reports, we live off the data that we produce. And one of the surveys that we recently did was taken in December of 2020, and it was what we call a security services view report that looked at over 1,500 respondents. And what we were really interested in is, what is the market looking at? What are people like all of you that are sitting in on this webinar today, what are you interested in terms of elevating your cybersecurity portfolio? What are the pain points? What are you looking at to add to your portfolio? Where you're looking to simplify? And where are you seeing the attacks coming in? What are you having to do in order to protect your firm, your organizations from that growing threat that's coming in from the internet, from all over? So let's go to the next slide. The results of some of this survey and others is kind of helping us to sharpen our focus in terms of what's going on out there right now. So our top bullet here, we talk about the evolving landscape. Well, what does the evolving landscape look like? Well, if you look at what you're doing today with your organizations versus what you're doing 2 years ago, I would speculate that most of you are probably dealing with a more cloud-centric environment than you were perhaps 2 years ago when more things were on-premise. Obviously, cloud has been around for a long time, but the evolution of moving to the cloud from on-prem networks has forced organizations to take a look at their technology stack. How we did security 2 years ago, a year ago, even say 3 months ago, when we look at some of these more prominent attacks that are coming out in the news media, such as Colonial Penn and these other attacks that are really raising their threshold in the news media and catching our attention, because you can't help but look at these attacks and go, could I be the next victim? So what do I need to do about that? Well, one of the technologies, one of the services, really, I think service is probably a better name for it than technology, that's really highlighted recently and has gained a lot of momentum is MDR. And IDC is really recognized, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, but we really see the evolution and the growth of MDR as one of those key blocking and tackling sort of technologies that help CISOs and other IT and technology leaders to be able to, frankly, get a good night's sleep, because they know that this sort of a service provides that detection and that response capability that's so crucial when these attacks come. And it's not a matter of if these attacks come, it's when these attacks come. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the evolution, but MDR really is just what we consider to be a subset of managed security services, but it's really risen to the top in terms of the capabilities and the elevation that it provides to firms as they look for those key technologies that can help to protect stakeholders that are interested in the security of the firms that they're involved in. Another key market trend that we're kind of seeing is how managed security service providers are really being elevated to make sure that they're providing technologies and services such as MDR, and what a key technology it is. One of the keys that you want to think about MDR, and again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, is how it simplifies things for you. It takes away that stress of managing multiple point products, and you hand that off to a provider that can really take a look at your technology stack, incorporate all that technology, all those alerts, all that information, and then provide the protection that we all need to be able to do in order to get a good night's sleep at night. Let's go to the next slide. So thanks, David. So this is what we kind of look at when we look at the evolution of managed security services. Prior to 2015, as the first viruses or as the attacks that were coming in prior to 2015, it didn't take quite as much in order to give the protection that we needed. A solid antivirus program, firewalls, intrusion detection systems. Those are the sort of things that CISOs and security teams were putting together. And it worked to the extent that it could, because the attacks that were coming in were not quite as sophisticated as the ones that we're seeing now. But over time, as the cyber miscreants, as the nation state attacks have elevated, that caused security teams to start looking for how else can we elevate our programs. Well, then we saw the explosion, the growth of SIEMs. We started seeing these next generation firewalls. We started looking at things like threat intelligence and how important it was to not only look at who's attacking us, but what are their tactics? What are their techniques? You start looking at things like the MITRE ATT&CK framework and other things that can help you to look at how do I need to protect my environment in order to respond to the attacks that are coming in from not only insider threats, but nation states and cyber criminals who are starting to launch the things that we're seeing more recently. The third wave that IDC recognized, the MSS 3.0, as we like to think of it, is the newer detection capabilities, how important it is to have an incident response capability. We don't want to be pulling out our incident response playbooks and run books the first time that we have a ransomware attack launched against us. That's the last thing you want to be doing. You want to be able to practice these things beforehand and really kind of recognizing that some of these attacks that are coming in and they can just sit dormant. You know, IDC has data that's just showing that sometimes these attackers will come in and we measure the time it takes to detect these attacks, not in minutes or hours or days, but it's literally months that some of these attackers can sit in our environments. That's why concepts such as threat hunting, being able to go out there and take a look proactively in terms of what's sitting in our environment, what's lurking. And then concepts like zero trust start feeding in, how important it is to start segmenting your network, not having, you know, your accounting system on the same network as your IoT infrastructure. You know, some of these things that CISOs and other technology leaders are looking at for help in terms of being able to simplify, yet make their organizations more resilient, more able to withstand all these attacks. So as we look at all these capabilities that are coming up here, the next slide is going to talk about some of the things that we're looking at. So this survey data is looking at, you know, what are the things that are the top reasons why your organization might be looking at managed security services. Again, top of the line, this one's great. Improve performance and efficiencies. You know, as IDC has looked at some of the technology, some of the areas where companies are investing, not just in security, but in the other parts of their technology stack, a common theme over the last year or two has been automation. How important it is for us to be able to do things quicker. Well, that top line, when we look at how important it is to improve performance and efficiencies, is a key component of any cybersecurity program. We need to make sure that everything that we have in our technology stack works. And it's sad because a lot of times when you look at the plethora of tools that you might have in your technology stack, you're looking at, you know, oftentimes incomplete configurations, configurations that aren't set up properly, that don't talk to each other, that don't feed a common system that can kind of correlate and take a look at all this data, all this telemetry that's coming in, that you need to be able to look at in order to say, okay, what are the attacks that are coming in? Are all these events that are coming in, you know, which ones are more important for me to look at? Which ones probably aren't, but, you know, we can take a look at down the road. So this common theme that we're seeing here is making sure that what we have works. At the same time, while also recognizing that we need to reduce complexity, because complexity is the enemy of security. So all these point products that we start taking a look at here, you know, whether it's your intrusion detection systems, whether it's your threat intelligence feeds, whether it's your SIEMs, all these take time. They all take effort. You have to talk to all the different vendors. You have to be able to train your staff on all these products, and it just gets complex. Security needs to be simplified. We need to find ways where we can, you know, hand off some of these responsibilities at times to companies that really have that capability of having your back, of being able to manage your technology stack, simplifying it, and making sure that it works so that when these advanced attacks come in, we're able to detect them, we're able to respond to them, and we're able to protect the crown jewels that we're trying to protect within our organization.
Yeah, so for this slide, we're going to launch that poll question that I talked about earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that now. All right. And here it comes. So if you guys could just answer the question, which capabilities do you consider most important in managed detection and response? So we kind of grouped a few of these together. So please tell us which ones you think are the top 2 capabilities that are considered most important in managed detection and response. So Craig, what does IDC define as threat hunting?
Oh, that's a great question, because there's some confusion. It takes time for people to understand what MDR is, but one of the key components of MDR is threat hunting. And when you talk to different firms, you're going to get different answers in terms of what threat hunting is. A lot of times what people think of threat hunting is, okay, I have an alert that comes in. I may have a piece of malware that's sitting in my environment. What a lot of providers will then try and do is they'll try and take a look at what other firms that they're providing services for may have that same malware, that the same indicators of attack that they can tie back to and take a look at that. And then they'll go hunt for those within the environment for the firms that they protect. That's kind of what we call reactive threat hunting, and that's important to do, and that's great when you have a provider that deals with a lot of different companies, where if an attack occurs for one of their companies, they can search for all the companies that they protect for that same alert. Proactive threat hunting is one of the differentiators that's so important to do, though. And what that is that's taking a look at the threats that are coming in, the threat intelligence, what sort of assets that they're trying to protect, and you start formulating hypotheses. When you start looking at what's going out across the field, across other environments, where are some potential areas where someone may have snuck something in? We talked earlier about how sometimes threats can sit in your environment for 3 months, 6 months. It's those sorts of criminals that are sitting in your environment that you want to be able to determine, where are they? Let's find them. Let's kind of root them out. So that's that proactive threat hunting that is grouped under threat hunting, but that's so important to be able to find.
Excellent. All right, so we've gotten a good number of votes here, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this poll here in 5 seconds. That's 5, 4, last chance, guys, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so closing the poll now, and then I'll put up here the results here. Share those out with everybody so you can see, and you'll see that 75% of our respondents found that threat intelligence and 24/7 monitoring was the number 1 capability they consider important in MDR, followed by encryption and threat hunting in the number 2 spot. The rest of those, not nearly the most important. Clearly, all of them are important, but not the most important. So we go ahead and close this out, and we'll see how that compared to what the buyers that were surveyed felt. So Craig, I'm going to move you over here to the next slide, and you can let them know what the top ones were. Was our audience here right?
Yeah, they're pretty close. That 24/7 monitoring, that came out at the top. Absolutely comes out at the top. And why is that? Well, I've mentioned sleep, I think, a couple of times, especially for smaller organizations. It's nice when you have that 24/7 monitoring. When even if something comes up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you've got someone that can take a look at what's going on and contain whatever that attack is. And if they have to call you and wake you up, that's fine. But you want to find a provider that can kind of take care of that for you to the extent that they often can. It's that 24/7 monitoring that's so important. I think threat intelligence, was also, if I recall correctly, from the poll that came out, 1 or 2. That's really important as well, because having a good threat intelligence program, having someone that can kind of give you that high-level advice in terms of, Mr. Organization, these are the types of attacks that we're seeing in your industry, in your region, in your area, and here's some concrete advice and plans that you can put in place to protect your crown jewels, to protect your organization, so that you're not the next firm that makes the news. That's so important. But really, if you look at all these are all important, but what do all of these take, David? When you look at all these programs, you know what they all take? They take time, they take energy, they take expertise. And if there's one poll that we've seen, if there's one statistic that we see in cybersecurity over time, that is how difficult it is to find qualified cybersecurity practitioners that can do all these functions. It's not easy. If it was simple, I guess they'd get paid a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
But as anyone who has to pay the bills for their cybersecurity teams or other tools that you have in your tool chest, this stuff is expensive because it's difficult. So what we want to be looking for, my advice to organizations that are sitting in and listening in on this, is you want to be able to prioritize. Where are some areas that we're looking at here that where something, our core competence isn't in, for example, threat intelligence. So you want to find a firm that can go out there and do that for you. Look at something like messaging security, email security, incident response. Gosh, that's so crucial. IDC is seeing a lot of attention being paid to incident response and incident readiness. Firms are recognizing that they need to be ready, but that may not be in your core wheelhouse. It's okay to go off and get help on that. It's okay to go off and get work with a firm that can give you an incident response capability, so that the next time that big attack comes and you make that call, they're not trying to figure out who you are. They're prepared to work with you on and engage your incident response playbook to help you out, to speed up your threat detection and response capabilities, get your business back to normal so that you're not a newsworthy item. So let's take a look at that next slide.
Before we move on, can I ask a question real quickly, Craig? Sure. So how often does IDC see companies kind of chasing the silver bullet of what's new and what's next instead of kind of really rolling out what they already have? Is that an issue?
We see that all the time, and I'm an analyst, so analysts live in buzzwords. So we like to talk about MDR and XDR and SIMs and IDSs and IPSs, and we kind of lose track of what all these acronyms are. So here's the truth: there is no one magic bullet. You need to have a holistic security program that encompasses security capabilities, technologies, and services to give you the kind of protection that you need. Chasing after the next silver bullet is not always the answer, but working with someone, getting that trusted security advisor that can work with you and find out what is it that you really need. My career as a practitioner, 20+ year practitioner, one of my favorite companies I ever worked with, I won't mention the name, but I had someone that worked with me and said, Craig, you don't need, and whatever the program was at the time, you aren't ready for that. And that gave me so much confidence in him, because he wasn't just trying to sell me something. He was saying, you're not quite ready for that new program. Let's wait another year before we go out there. I think that's key. You're not going to be able to elevate from MSS 1.0 as we showed in that previous slide all the way up to 3.0. You need to have a program, have a framework, work your way up until you're in a more elevated program where you're able to fully protect your organization, given the budget constraints that you have. So don't chase that silver bullet. Make sure that you have a holistic program that is utilizing the proper tools, technologies, and services that you need to protect your organization.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Here now I'll let you get back to the next slide.
Yeah, let's look at MDR and gosh, I feel like I'm betraying myself, so I'm going to say this is a silver bullet. It's not. But what MDR does is it incorporates all those other capabilities, all these capabilities that we're talking about, into one packaged service that does what I like to refer to as that blocking and tackling. So when we talk about the MDR tools like technologies, a lot of people that are looking at this webcast are probably recognizing some of these. You probably have a lot, if not most of these, within your environment. You probably have a SIM sitting over there that you're trying to utilize in order to be able to detect, or maybe using it for compliance and for log management. Being able to utilize capabilities such as EDR, for the endpoint capability. And there really is this misnomer about MDR and EDR that I think is an important distinction to make. MDR incorporates multiple telemetry. So MDR providers should be taking a look at, what's on your network, what's in your cloud, what's in your IoT environment. It's not just EDR plus, it's taking EDR data and telemetry and mixing that with other telemetry that you get in order to be able to find out which attacks are coming into your environment and being able to detect them and respond to them in a timely manner. So as you take a look at this big wheel of technology and tools and services that you see here, being able to roll all these different technologies into a bucket that we call Managed Detection and Response, MDR, gives you really good bang for the buck in terms of giving you that 24/7 Managed Detection and Response capability. And ultimately, what are we looking at? What that does is that gives you an outcome. That gives you a business outcome that says, my business is protected. Does that mean you're never going to see something come across, a zero-day threat that come across? No, of course not. You're still going to have those capabilities. But because you've elevated your security program to the level that we see that an MDR program gives you, you're able to have confidence that, something, when that zero-day attack comes, you're not looking at that incident response playbook for the first time, because you've probably considered things such as an incident response retainer. You're taking a look at an elevated security team that's talking with the security practitioner, the security services firm that does this. It's their bread and butter. They live, breathe, and die by this stuff. And the attacks that they see that occur in your firm, they've seen in other firms as well, and they're used to being able to respond and contain those attacks so that you're not the next news item, so that you're not the next victim in paying out these exorbitant ransomware payments to those cyber criminals. So David, that's kind of what I was kind of looking at today is I wanted to make sure that everyone that's sitting on this webinar kind of gets that idea of how important MDR is in terms of really, in a weird sort of way, simplifying your stack, being able to hand that off to someone that says, let's take this bucket of tools, technologies, and services, wrap it around in a service wrapper that can give me confidence,
right?
And frankly, give me a chance to get a good night's sleep.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for that information. I really appreciate it, Craig. And I'm gonna go to Mark Cornwell now, but we'll definitely come back to you with a couple questions here at the end. I have a few more for you to wrap up. So thanks so much for now, Craig. And with that said, wanted to turn it over to Mark Cornwell, so he can talk to everybody a little bit about how consolidation impacts IT teams. Mark is a practitioner and has great experience. So looking forward to what he has to share. So Mark, all on you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon. I wanted to kind of start by just kind of giving an overview as a leader in an IT organization. You have to evolve. You have to continue to improve the organizational design and rethink how you approach certain things. And one of the acknowledgments, certainly recently, is the rapid pace at which technology is changing, as well as the migration to either hybrid or private hosted environments, cloud environments, and the capability that are needed to continue to operate in that distributed environment. So when I take a look at how I evolve my organization, three areas are becoming more and more prominent in terms of areas that I focus on personally. The first one is around human capital management. Obviously there's an organization behind how we deliver services to NetSurian, and getting the right staff in place, ensuring that they're receiving the proper training and certifications and growing in their roles is critical. Cybersecurity, which up until maybe 5 years ago was one or two guys that were in that within the IT organization, or maybe you had a dedicated security team. It has evolved substantially in the last several years. So ensuring that this infrastructure that used to be all in a single data center or in multiple data centers that you have control over is now partially in the public cloud. Software development is becoming far more complicated. The management of DevOps, security around that, and then with the advent of bad actors and kind of stealing of intellectual property, the ability to protect that and keep it within the four walls, the virtual four walls of an organization, is becoming more and more important. And in a I would say post pandemic type world, we always saw the trends of having a distributed workforce, but it has increased exponentially. And in order to support the diversity of the type of environments that individuals are working in now, managing that distributed workforce, keeping control of devices and ensuring that trusted devices are able to access networks and control what users may or may not be able to do on devices is becoming a significant portion of the workload that IT organizations face. And what I provided, here is really just a high-level overview, and every IT organization is not the same. But generally speaking, you're going to have some type of infrastructure management, your networking, your servers, any of the cloud deployments that you have. That's that portion. There's a team that's responsible for that. Software development for back office systems or core corporate applications, that's a typical function you would see in IT. We as well as other companies actually build IT products, so having that product engineering team and ensuring that they are have the tools needing security that they need to deliver products is essential. And then program project management, another functional area that oversees, basically getting stuff done within the organization. Not necessarily every organization is going to be structured this way, but it gives you an idea of the components that typically make up a mature organization in a typical environment. You can move on to the next slide. So what this next slide is really, it's kind of like a NASCAR slide. If all these logos represent what a typical IT organization, to a certain extent, is faced with. In larger organizations, you may have hundreds, if not thousands, of discrete software, hardware, services vendors that you're managing as an IT organization. And obviously with that comes the complexity of just the administration of it, but also the ability for the individuals as part of the team to maintain proficiency in these technologies, contractual obligations, all the things that go into managing vendors at scale. Obviously, if you're a smaller organization, the type of footprint that you have as it relates to vendor relationships may be smaller, but the tech stack is not getting any smaller for 99% of the IT practitioners that are out there. So managing that sprawl and finding ways to consolidate technology either through software vendors and maybe settling for software packages that are from a single vendor but may not have all the features that we'd have from best of breed, or working with a managed service provider who actually is able and deliver software solutions that you don't really have to put your hands on, and that a vendor is taking care of that for you. So all of these things, in order for you to optimize the landscape that you're working that you're delivering for your organization, is key. And obviously, for an organization our size and many organizations our size, the ability to retain and train and mentor talent and get them efficient in this type of portfolio of applications and solutions is very difficult. And that's where the consolidation and leaning on some service partners is key to making it all work. Next slide. So when I look and I approach consolidation, we have a lot of reasons why we would do that. And if the cost efficiency obviously is critical. If you're paying multiple vendors who do similar things for the same software, if you can consolidate and get additional capabilities and ensure that all of those bases are covered and you're not overpaying for the services, that's critical. And the ability to deliver services through more efficiently to your end user and have visibility into that. One of the benefits, we happen to be a customer of our own MDR services, our own managed threat protection services, and that takes a significant load off the internal IT organization to be able to hand off security monitoring for every server, every laptop, every device that we have in the organization is managed and monitored from a security perspective by our SOC. So the team, my team, the internal IT organization can focus on the operational aspects of the business, in terms of availability, reliability, and performance of the services that we're delivering for our internal customers. And as we also start to look at how you consolidate vendors is really getting to more, I would say, co-beneficial relationships with your vendors. That's revisiting contract terms and possibly looking at other solutions from a single vendor, or consolidating contracts for software under a single value-added reseller as opposed to going directly. A lot of different options to do that, and there's not a one-size-fits-all program to get to a vendor consolidation. And if your specific need doesn't lend itself toward difficulty managing many vendors and many software providers, then it may be that you have a less of a need than another organization. Next slide, please.
All right, thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate that feedback. And now I'm going to have a few questions for everyone. So now would be a great time for everyone else to get their questions entered for Craig and Mark. I have a few myself, then we'll move on to any more that you all may have. So please take a few moments while they're answering my questions and enter anything you would like in the questions tab. So let's kick this off talking about how organizations end up overloaded with technology. And Craig, this first question is going to be for you. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but when does chasing a best of breed point solutions become an issue?
Yeah, every time you're chasing a best of breed solution, what you end up doing is you end up with, to use an old-fashioned term, your Rolodex fills up. Because you end up dealing with multiple vendors, and every time you're dealing with multiple vendors, that's a relationship that has to be built. That's training that has to be built up. That takes extra time. Analyst time is so precious. And when you start filling up in terms of changing your technology stack so often, that becomes painful. So it doesn't mean you can't do that, but you have to recognize that there's cost when you keep chasing after these best of breed point solutions. Whenever possible, I would recommend trying to find a holistic technology stack from fewer technology vendors than when spreading it out. I know Mark might have some ideas on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, best of breed generally gives you a lot of capability that goes unused. So when you think about solving a problem as a practitioner, you want to make something as simple as possible and no simpler. And so best of breed solutions will typically have a lot of bells and whistles that, when you really look at your organization and your needs, are beyond necessary for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I'll chime in one last point. When we look at a lot of the root causes of so many incidents that occur when firms are breached, so often it's misconfiguration. It's things that just weren't set up properly, or the worst case scenario is when someone thinks that something's fully set up and it isn't. That's the kind of the danger you can get when you go after all these different multi-vendor best of breed solutions.
That's great. Thank you both. Thank you both very much. So Mark, question for you in terms of, in what ways does a changing staff impact tech stacks?
You know, obviously skill sets are important, and your ability to you don't want to actually build your tech stack around your team, but you make decisions about what you can potentially implement as an organization based on what you reasonably can expect to support. So if, for example, I need to introduce a new technology and I don't have the capability in my current team, I have to make a decision. Do I, change the organization and potentially eliminate a role that maybe is underutilized, or add stuff, or do I, invest in training or adding additional resources to the team? So I would say it's more of an inverse question, is that, how does the tech stack affect your staffing, as opposed to how does changing staff impact your tech stack? Your tech stack is your tech stack. You can evolve it over time, but ultimately you're going to have individuals who need to maintain it and monitor it and care and feed for it. So the tech stack drives a lot of how your staffing ultimately evolves. So it's kind of a mixed question, but that's the best explanation I can give for it.
And that makes sense, and I assume that that applies to kind of what my next one was involved in terms of mergers and acquisitions and how that impact your tech stacks as well. Maybe the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, M&A, unless you happen to have the perfect marriage of two technology organizations coming together, which I've never seen happen, you generally will see a lot of overlap in capabilities. So consolidation, it seems like a logical approach, but there may be practical reasons why even though you may have the need in both organizations, you have to kind of stick with the existing technology that one brings to the table. M&A there are always trade-offs in how quickly you can integrate the technology between the two companies. So it does have a tendency to, at least initially, create a substantially more complex environment. You can start to create some programs around how do we consolidate vendors, how do we consolidate technology stacks.
All right, thank you very much. So let's move on to our next section of questions. And again, still time for you guys out there to get your questions in. Just enter them in the questions tab. We'll get to these right after we finish up with this next section. So talking here about when and how to prioritize consolidation. So Mark, I'm going to start with you. Where does the vendor or product consolidation rank in terms of CIO, CTO, CISO priorities?
This one really depends on the maturity level or the life cycle of the organization that you're working in, and the pace at which things are changing. For us, vendor consolidation was probably if you were to ask me this 5 years ago, whenever we did our first merger, I would say that it was a significant priority for us. As we continue to edit and monitor our vendor consolidation over time, it's less of a priority now. However, if tomorrow we were to look at an acquisition or integrating another organization, another company, I would take a different view of where this would relate. When it comes to security solutions, though, I think now more than ever it should be a priority for CISOs and CIOs, CTOs to really look at the numerous solutions that they've deployed to support security and to try to find either MDR providers or other MSSPs to start to take some of that load off, because the space is changing so rapidly that I think you'd be better off consolidating vendors as it relates to providing security services and capabilities, as opposed to trying to go and do the research and get up to speed and train your team. And because even if you hire cybersecurity expert today, their ability to keep up with the different tools and solutions and all the information that's out there is virtually impossible unless you can lean on a service provider to do that. It's very difficult.
Excellent. Craig, a question came in that may kind of tie into that answer a little bit. There was something about how mid-size organizations can convince executives or their board to evolve from an MSP 2.0 to a 3.0. I know you had talked about that earlier. Any thoughts on that, or ways to kind of sell that, I guess, internally, that hey, we need to step up and move up here a little bit?
Yeah, if there's anything that's kind of occurred, over the last 2 years has been that rapid rush to the cloud. So the security infrastructure that we used to use when securing our on-prem environment, it's a little bit different when you're looking at a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environment where you still have some on-premise assets that you need to protect. So this really is a good time to kind of get that holistic third-party view look of, okay, what does my technology stack look like right now, and what are the best ways to simplify it and secure it? That's kind of one key strategy. Another noteworthy point is, when IDC is looking at different survey data, one of the things that we've kind of seen, and it hasn't surprisingly been abated during the recent events, is that security budgets are still increasing. We continue to see recognition from the boards and others in terms of how important cybersecurity is. So when we start looking at changing how we're securing our organizations, there tends to be some pretty good support, but I would caution that this won't last forever. Now that we've made this rush to the cloud, after we make this consolidation, we're going to have to start taking a look at what are some ways that we can secure our organizations in a way that doesn't make CFOs lose sleep at night. And one of those ways is going to be through simplifying your technology stack, simplifying the number of vendors. You're not having to train your staff on multiple point products out there. So now is the time to do it while there's still momentum behind budgets going up. Make the investments to make sure you're securing a more cloud-centric environment.
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing this as the natural time to consolidate. Any thoughts on a forced transition? Just in terms of really pushing people, now is the time. Hey, you've added a bunch of stuff. Let's get this all consolidated.
Yep, and they expect that with all the recent changes that they need that confidence. Stakeholders, the boards, your customers, your vendors. There's a lot more interest nowadays in terms of how our third-party firms, how secure are their infrastructures, so that anything that happens to them doesn't impact you. So there's definitely a lot of interest in terms of transitioning to simpler environments that are secure, that are easier to maintain. And one of the key ways that you can do that is making sure you're engaging with the right service provider that can provide you that technology stack, but also be that trusted ear in your head that gives you the advice you need to in this new environment that we're in.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. All right, well, those are the questions I had for both of you. So I'm going to move on. We had a couple come in. Please add a few more if you guys would like, but I'm going to ask these first couple to Craig and Mark that have come in, and you guys can add to these as well. And Mark, I'm going to throw you a little softball here, but I tend to see this. I host a few webcasts over the year, and I tend to see this one a lot in terms of people still have a SOC that operates Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And I get the question of, is that good enough? And it just, to me, it kind of makes, do you let go of any thoughts on the weekend, Mark? You're sure everything's secure over the weekend, but why should we have a SOC that's 24/7 instead of Monday through Friday, 8 to 5?
Well, the bad guys don't sleep. I think that's one. So if something goes wrong, Murphy's Law will tell you it's not going to happen 8 to 5. It's going to happen in some off hour, some odd time of the day. And quite frankly, anybody who signs up to have an IT function within an organization that even if they're not a 24/7 operation, the technology is always on. So not monitoring on a 24/7 basis seems extremely short-sighted and risky.
Yeah, Craig, are you guys seeing a lot of still 8 to 5 Monday through Friday SOCs out there, or it seems to me that that's a little odd, but I still get it every webcast I host.
Yeah, there are still 8 to 5 SOCs, but really, I use the term blocking and tackling that MDR can kind of provide you.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the goals that security teams want to be able to have is, where can they be strategic, and where can they be tactical? If you're strategic, you can do 8 to 5, okay, but you need that 24/7 monitoring capability, from the service provider that can kind of cover those tactical day-to-day needs, while freeing up your staff to be strategic, to start thinking about ways that you can reduce risk. For looking at ways where you can take a look at your network infrastructure and your training needs and other things that provide that long-term value, those sort of bullet points that boards like to look at. But 8 to 5 in terms of a pure SOC, oh my gosh, you're in so much trouble if that's what you're relying upon.
Great. Here's a bit of a thinker for you. Craig, let's start with you. Are you seeing any IT or cybersecurity insights that you've seen this year that have kind of come up this year, or stuff you're looking for in the coming year, over the next 6 months, let's say?
One of the key terms, we talk about silver bullets, but I also like to think about big concepts. And one of the key concepts that we're seeing is this whole concept of incident readiness and cyber resilience. And really what that is that's a recognition that firms are getting really more mature. And maybe it's because of all the news items about ransomware and other things, but firms are starting to recognize that, we need to be proactive rather than reactive. We need to start recognizing that we don't live in a bubble, that, that next attack that makes the news could be us. So what do we do to prepare ourselves to be resilient to those attacks? Mm-hmm. And then the other key thing is really, again, I think I briefly mentioned it before, is making sure that those partners and suppliers that you work with, making sure that they're prepared as well. We live in an era of super tight supply chains. Mm-hmm. And it's so important that the vendors that you work with, how resilient are they in terms of making sure that if an attack comes their way, that they can still function and fulfill their contractual obligations to their suppliers, customers, and vendors.
Okay, that all makes sense. And you talked about those suppliers, and so Mark, a question came in terms of what company or / partner functions are best to out-task. Any thoughts? I guess it kind of depends on the size of your team as well, but any thoughts on what would be best to reach out to somebody else to help you with?
I mean, there are a lot of things that you could potentially outsource, and it does depend on the capabilities you have internally. There are some things that could be outsourced. There are some things that you want to, maybe outsource temporarily as you build out the staff. Again, I mentioned before that the pace at which the cybersecurity landscape is changing and the providers are changing. The ability for an internal IT organization to maintain a reliable capability, internally, on the resources to find the skill set, it's extremely tight in the space, and you're paying a premium for that capability. And generally, you're not able to staff as fully as you would with the managed service. So I would definitely say, security services and the ability to monitor your network for security and also vulnerability scanning and proactively monitor to threats is key. And the 24/7 aspect of it, anything that you need 24/7 on, unless you're equipped with a 24/7 NOC SOC, internally, it's something that you really should consider outsourcing. And then other things, obviously, there's software as a service or other capabilities, Office 365 and other things that are already outsourced. There's a significant migration toward those solutions that are purely cloud-based, where the infrastructure and IT management has been alleviated substantially. The things that I would say focus on, if you want to not outsource them, that's the key intellectual property, the development, the things that make your position special, is to keep those things in house and outsource all the things that that really aren't adding value to the enterprise in terms of building capability.
I think that's very good information. So thank you so much for that. Well, that is all the time. There is one more question, but I always save the last one that I can answer. So I really enjoy that. I get to pretend I'm an expert for a second. But before I answer that last question, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending. You'll see, we'll send you guys links to download the IDC report and our MDR buyer's guide in our follow-up email, along with the recording of today's webcast as well. So thank you everybody for attending, and I'm going to get to this last question because I always have a good answer for this one. The question was about the acronym soup of EDR, MDR, and XDR. They said they've heard MDR a lot today, but they're hearing XDR more. Where should we go on that? And I'm going to tell you that on July 22nd, you should be coming to a webcast that we are hosting, NetShurian is hosting. We'll send you a link to register for that in our follow-up email as well. So join us. You can learn a lot more about MDR, XDR, and the alphabet soup that goes along with the DRs coming out of that. So I love to put on my pretend expert hat and share some information with you guys, and we'll have that with real experts at that point. So thank you once again, everybody, for attending today. Mark, Craig, thank you so much for all the insight you guys provided. It was really, really insightful and really helpful to me, and I'm sure to everybody that attended as well. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk with you all soon.